Did I commit a crime when I was photographing the streets of Geneva? Hi, it's Peter here. I visited Geneva, Switzerland last week, and it was a bit of a struggle to photograph on the streets because of the strict laws that they have about street photographs and people in them. I will discuss that a bit later about the crime that I committed, or did I, after I talk a little bit about the rules and ethics of street photography. And disclaimer, these things that I talk about are not strict legal advice. This video only discuss things or the things that you need to consider when making photographs in a public place. And what is the difference between law and the ethics? If we start with the first difference that we have to remember, that photographing and publishing in most countries is a different thing. I take an example here from Finland. In Finland, on the streets, in a public place where everybody has access, that there is no cost to get in, you can photograph anything you want. There is no restrictions on that by law. But publishing an image and showing it to the public is a different thing. If you kind of show the person in bad light, and I don't mean the light that lights my butt, in a way that people might think that person is, or there's something wrong with the person, for example. And let's take an example. If someone passes out on the streets, you can take a photograph of the person, but you cannot publish it because it will show the person in bad light. And the same goes with, anything else. If somebody, takes a pee in the middle of the street, you can photograph, but you cannot publish it. And I, for example, never photograph drunks on the streets, or people that are in trouble, or beggars or something like that. Even though it's legal, I find it not to be very ethical. And that's what we have to remember. Ethical versus what's legal, and differ from photographing and publishing. That in most cases, I will get back into that because there are some countries that there is no difference, but I will get into that a bit later. And then about publishing, there is one thing that we have to always remember too, is the context of art and commercials. In most countries, and I would say that 100% of the places, commercial use, you always need a consent from the people that you are photographing. So you cannot use a photograph in a commercial if you don't have the consent from the people that are in the photograph, and they know that it's going to be a commercial. That's always. But then the art part is a bit on the gray side, or totally fine. And even in places where you don't have the right to publish without the consent, there might be some exceptions if it is about art, because they consider art to be part of free speech, and you can express your views as a photographer photographing people on the street and publishing them, even though there might be some requirements for consent when you're photographing people in the streets. And France, for example, is on this side a bit gray area, where you kind of need a permission, but then if you publish the photograph in the context of art, it might be totally fine. But as I said in the disclaimer, this is not a legal advice. This is just stuff that I've read, and I will share a website where you have all these different rules for different countries. I will put the link in the description about that site. It's a very helpful site. When you're traveling around, you can check the rules and the laws and the stuff that requires or is involved with street photographs. Street photography in Geneva. Switzerland has probably the strictest laws when it comes to photographing people in public places. And there aren't many countries that has these strict rules. I think like Brazil and Spain are quite close, and France, but that's about it. Most other countries in the world that I know of are more liberal in this sense. And I'm not saying that Switzerland is wrong. It's their law, and I can see the point that you cannot photograph people in the public and use them in your own advantage as a photographer. Yeah, I can see that. But on the other hand, it's a bit odd thing that you can't photograph people in the public place, because, when you're walking in a public place, why cannot I express my free speech through photographs if I want to? In Switzerland, that is so. So when I was in Geneva, Switzerland, I struggled a bit because, of course, you have to be a bit careful not to photograph people in a way that they are a big essential part of the photograph. And the gray area is where can you photograph people if you don't recognize who they are? And there is also a thing that if they recognize themselves, at least here in Finland, it's not enough. It has to be so that everybody else knows who it is. But if you photograph people from behind, a general public won't know who they are. So that's a bit of a gray area. And you need to figure out another ways to do street photographs. Maybe you photograph something that you have traces of humans, or you got some street views or cityscape type photographs or something like that. And that's of course one part of street photographs. And I do have a video about these different types of or different ways of making street photographs, different styles and different genres inside street photograph where there are no humans. And I think that's totally fine. It can tell a story about somebody leaving something somewhere, and you can photograph that, and you have a sense of someone has been present in the place, leaving this and doing that. So it is, I think, a very good way of making street photographs too. So there's nothing wrong with that. But to be honest, to get emotions, to get feelings, you might need some people in the photographs. This photograph of a swan, I think this has a lot of emotion and, you know, the sense of loneliness and a bit sadness and the position of the head and everything. It's kind of like a little melancholy image. So you can do this type of images if you, feel like it. And I did have some melancholy feeling on the images because I was a bit struggling because I saw a lot of things that I could have photographed. Would I've been making the image and would have been come out? Of course, that we don't know because I never took those images because I respected the law. But I could not resist a few situations where I took the photograph and told the person that it's okay if I, took this photograph and use it in my video. And, both they said, yes, I showed the photograph and, they said it's totally fine to use these photographs. So did I commit a crime? In a sense that I photographed them without their consent. Yes, I did. But on the other hand, I asked afterwards that if it was okay, because I just couldn't resist these two situations. But what do you think about this law? Should it be totally legal to photograph everybody everywhere and publish them? What's your opinion on this? Because I think this is the fundamental thing about street photographs and street photography that we have to know. And here is the site, Commons Wiki page. And again, a disclaimer. These are the basic rules on different countries. But of course, this is not a legal document or legal site. If you do photograph people in the public, you might get into some troubles, maybe. But to be honest, I've never gotten into any trouble when photographing people in the streets. And nor did I get into trouble in Geneva, even though I was, photographing as a tourist and as a street photographer on my trip. So, well, it remains to be seen if something happens afterwards when they see this video. I don't know. Hopefully not. But, of course, I tried to respect the rules and made some different types of street photographs in Geneva. Beautiful city, by the way. So if you have never been there, it's worth a visit because it's a beautiful city by the lake and, everything looks nice. Expensive, though, because they have the UN thing there. So there are a lot of UN officials and usually places with that is pretty expensive. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and here are some more videos about street photographs and how to be invisible, which is very essential if you are doing classical street photographs and you don't want to interfere with the things that are happening. But hey, thanks for watching and bye for now.